having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. Verse 7 of Ephesians 1, in him we have redemption through his blood. We get into the text for today, Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. Let's go ahead and read 1 through 5. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of the wife was Naomi. The names of the 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, and you can argue about the pronunciation if you want to, but that's the best I can do with that one. Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband. Now back to verse 1, we start off, now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. What does it, the judges rule, what does that, how does that affect this story?
Well, it gives a time frame. It'll solidify the context of government and kings and so forth. There were no kings. They had judges.
Right. Okay. Also, if we turn back one page in the Bible and look at the verse just before Ruth, it says, this is Judges 21, verse 25. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And sometimes today, religion and other things, it seems like everybody's doing whatever they want to do rather than being guided by Bible or guided by the laws of the land or whatever. And that's kind of where we find what was going on at the time.
Well, you got to remember that there's time there when after Moses come into the land, the judges were the ones that took over. And this was set up even before they came into the promised land.
Right. The judges took over. They weren't kings. They weren't other rulers. And some of the judges were good and some of them were not. And you had this cycle of things going on. Judges 2 shows where the Israelite nation was. They forsook the Lord and served Baal and the Ashtaroths. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel. Wherever they went out, the hand of the Lord was against them for calamity, as the Lord had said, and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were greatly distressed. And I wonder if that's why the Lord had caused the famine on the land as a punishment or to the Israelite nation. And that may have resulted in the famine that they were experiencing. Where the nation, says that they were Ephrathites of Bethlehem. And to me, in looking, I couldn't separate Ephrath from Bethlehem. They seem to be the same place. Does anybody have any further knowledge of that?
Yeah, in the Bible and other places, I've been in the study, it says, which is Bethlehem.
Right. Ephrath, which is Bethlehem, that's what I ran across, and I couldn't find anything
Two
to
different
separate.
places it shows up.
So why there was that additional designation.
Old traditions stand, I guess.
That So we have death of the husband and the death of the two sons. Two sons were responsible for caring for Naomi. Then they she was left without. Now, there's another mention that they took wives of Moab, of women of Moab. Deuteronomy 23:3, an Amorite or Moabite shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants shall enter the congregation of the Lord forever. So this was law concerning those of Moab, which makes the story of Ruth even more compelling, if you will, in what she did to take care of Naomi. Okay, any thoughts up to this point? All right, verses 6 and 7, Naomi hears that there is food back in Bethlehem, and so she prepares to go back to Bethlehem. Verse 8, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. Now the author kind of explains what was going on as far as them leaving as Orpah and Ruth going with Naomi, just kind of see her out of the house or see her out of the edge of the town or whatever. But I get something more as I read it. It appears to me as though all three have picked up their belongings and are moving. And any thoughts about that? And it impresses me that Naomi probably, knowing what the Israelite view of the Moabites would be, she was encouraging Ruth and Orpah to go back to their people. That's where they grew up. That's their family. That's their home. They know the customs. They'll be accepted. They can find husbands and remarry. As a matter of fact, another translation of verse 9, "May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." In the New King James, "The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." As I read that the first time, well, her husband is dead. The house of her husband would be back with Naomi, but that's not what's being said. She's blessing them or encouraging them to find new husbands and continue their life, and not knowing that she will be a widow, and it's going to be a tough life. She's going back to Bethlehem, to where her people are. Any other thoughts about that? Okay, verse 10. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight and should bear sons, would you wait for them till they are grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? And this gets back to the law that if a man and a wife, and the husband dies, they don't have a son, that a brother would provide children for that woman. And we see this several times, both in a positive and even with Jesus, they tried to confuse Jesus or challenge Jesus with that, whose husband would this be in heaven, if there is as a resurrection, whose the husband will she be? Because she's had 7 husbands, the brothers that anyway, that was the law that's being referred to here.
There was no brother-in-law for them to go to.
Right. Yeah, if it was a brother situation, it would have been Chilion and Malon. But they're both dead, so it didn't say if they died at the same time, same disease, similar, very close. Anyway, it doesn't say. And we have the law. If they would go back with Naomi, the Israelite would say, we're not to marry a Moabite. So finding a husband in Israel would also be a challenge. So Naomi continues, no, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. In Job 1, verse 22, after all that Job had faced, and all the things that were said against him, and all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. And again in verse 2, chapter 2, verse 10, but he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Anyone have a thought about that particular thing that Naomi just said here? The hand of the Lord is going out against me. So they lifted up their voices, verse 14, they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said to Ruth, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. An important phrase there. Return after your sister-in-law. And then we get to what's probably the heart of this book. Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. How many of us have heard this as part of a wedding ceremony? Commitment of wife to husband and husband to wife. Say it again. Till death do us part. And this would indicate even beyond, I'll be buried where you're buried. Any other thoughts about this particular passage? I pick up on the your God will be my God. A commitment to leave the gods of low lights, things that she has grew up with, and accept the God of Israel. Verse 18, when she, Naomi, saw that Ruth, was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. And I don't think that meant that they quit talking. I have had people get aggravated with me and not speak to me for a while, but I don't think that's what's going on here. She just quit trying to convince her to go back to her people. And she allowed her to go with her. And the author here skips from this over to on into chapter 4. But I think there's some real important things in chapters 2 and 3 to look at. First of all, they arrive in Bethlehem, and the people are thrilled to see Naomi back. It brings out that Naomi, the word name Naomi means pleasant. When they greet her, Naomi says, "Please call me Mara," which means bitter. So she is in a bitter time in her life, bitterness in her being. She expects, you might say, she expects the life of a widow, which is to be very tough. So Ruth, let me see, chapter 2, verse 2. Going to your Bible instead of the study guide. Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him in whose sight I may find favor." Verse 1 does mention that there is in the area a man who is a relative named Boaz. Mentions he's a man of great wealth. The New King James translates it. Other translations will say great worth or of great standing in the community.
Bethlehem, not out here, it's the same Bethlehem where we used to born. And
Right, when we get to, yeah, Ruth and Boaz marrying, they have a son. Ruth becomes part of the lineage of Christ. So, here it is right in front. Ruth asked to go glean in the fields. There were provisions in the Old Testament law about taking care of the poor. Gleaning was the term used. Deuteronomy 24, when you reap your harvest in your fields and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it, for it shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your, and it doesn't apply to just grain, when you beat your olive trees, you shall not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you should not glean it afterwards. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command you to do this thing. Any other thoughts about the term gleaning, what to glean? Right, chapter 2, verse 3, she left a man gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Boaz came, verse 4, from Bethlehem, and said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? Recognizing that there's someone different in the fields other than his young men and his slaves. So the servant of the reapers, the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered and said, "It is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." And she asked, or she said, "Please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." So she came and has continued from morning until now. And Boaz said to Ruth, "You will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not go to glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." So she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully reported to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay you. The Lord repaid your work, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Verse 15, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also let grain from the bundles fall purposefully for her. Leave it, that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." We find that Ruth has in the day without cell phones and text messages, and somehow or other, everybody knew about Ruth and how she was taking care of Naomi. Just kind of like when I was in Korea, you wanted to find out things that were going on the base, you asked people in town, because they seemed to everybody know what was going on the base, whether you knew or not. Whether it was official book, but anyway. So she continued on in the Boaz's fields through the barley season and the wheat season. Verse 23, she stayed close by the young women of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and wheat harvest, and she dwelt with her mother-in-law. Chapter 3, we get into the beginning of what the author has started. Naomi's mother said to my daughter, "Shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you?" And verse 4, she recognizes that Boaz is a relative and he's been kind of providing for them. Verse 4, then it shall be when he lies down, the instructions that Naomi gives to Ruth. You shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. And Ruth said to her, all that you say to me I will do. Verse 8, now it happened at midnight that the man was startled and turned himself, and there a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, who are you? So she answered, I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative. And Boaz responded, blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request, for all the people of the town know that you are a virtuous woman. However, there is a relative closer than I, verse 12. 13, so stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you as the Lord lives. So in the morning she goes back to Naomi, and Naomi says, sit still, my daughter, until you know the matter will turn out. Know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day. In the beginning of chapter 4, Boaz went to the gate, which is where all the business happens. People go in and out of town through the gate. And the close relative whom Boaz had spoken came by. He came inside, sat down. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here. So they all sat down. And he asked the other relative, if you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it. And I am next after you. And at first he said, I will redeem it. But then Boaz continued, on the day that you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also buy it from Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance. Verse 6, the close relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself. This is included in our text. Lest I ruin my own inheritance. You redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it. There were some, under the law, if the closest redeemer or brother would not redeem, would not marry a woman and provide children, there were some penalties given. And the woman was to take the sandal and slap him and spit on his face, and he would be, again, that would be against him in the community. In this case, he has moved the birthright on down to Boaz. So Boaz does buy the land and marries Ruth, and they have Obed, which is in the lineage of David. Any other thoughts about it? We're about out of time, I guess, about this process or this. He made sure that everything was done in order. He made sure that there were witnesses. There were everybody knew what was going on. Okay. Thank you for your attention. I've only got a couple more pages to go, but next week will be Phil Sanders, and then the following week will be David and Bathsheba, 2 weeks